Welcome to Real Women's Stories. This is my midweek episode and my coaching episode. I am going to be talking about co-parenting and navigating that process through divorce. I remember when I was a kid and my parents got divorced, I really struggled. I didn't know who was to blame. Was I to blame? Was it my fault? I didn't know who to love more. I used to go back from my parents feeling guilty about seeing the other parent. And it doesn't matter if you have gone through the best divorce, your kids at some point are going to see a little spark of negativity between you and your ex. It just happens. Arguments happen, and then dirt gets brought up about the divorce, and little ears can hear. They can often hear and they can see and they can pick up on it. So this episode is about co-parenting, navigating that journey, but thinking about our mindsets. We can look at all the practicalities to do with co-parenting in terms of, sitting down and having meetings and, trying to work out a schedule. But if we're not feeling calm and if we don't really take a step back and acknowledge all of the feelings that we've been going through, how can we show up in front of our children with our ex-partner and be the best version of ourselves? I think it's really important to think about and to delve into all the stuff that's happened to you within your divorce, why you've got divorced, all the good stuff and the bad stuff. Get it all down on a piece of paper. Start journaling. Start writing all the stuff down, because it's often a great venting tool. And you might want to do this each time you're going to have contact with your ex-partner. And each time you may be speaking to them on the phone, just have a vent. Have a vent in a journal, in a book, on a piece of paper, and just get all that angst out. And then once you've done that, let's acknowledge our feelings. Let's acknowledge how we're feeling, because if we don't, we just push them down and they come back up to the surface again. So write down how you're feeling and then acknowledge those feelings. I'll give you an example. I could be angry at my ex-partner because he's mucked up a schedule from the time before. The kids' routine is all out of sync, and it's made me really angry and really frustrated because when the kids came back, I had to deal with the onslaught of, well, we can do stuff at Dad's that we can't do at yours. So write that all down. And then I want you to, as I said, acknowledge it. So I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling angry, and those feelings are real. But you know what? There's a reason why you're breaking up if you have children as well, because you don't want the children to suffer. It's not a good place, an environment for your kids to grow up with two people fighting, with two people arguing, because there's no way you're going to stay in a relationship if all of that is going on in your household. You've made the decision that you're going to split up. You've made it for the right reasons. And now you have to think about your children when you're co-parenting. So it's about changing our mindset from the angry, frustrated person that you are during those previous situations and thinking, how am I now going to show up for my kids? Because whilst all of that is going on, there is no way that you can have a decent, calm conversation with your ex-partner. I'd like to now think about our children. So let's think about how they're feeling, because they didn't choose to be in this situation. It's not their choice, because as a child, you just want your mum and dad around and you want them together and you want it to be a happy home. Well, if that's not possible, how can we make this environment happy for our kids and a safe, supported environment so the children don't suffer during this whole process? I'd like you now to write down, put yourself in your child's mindset and think, if my mum and dad were breaking up, how would I want them to behave? How would I want them to be around me and be around each other when I'm there? It then brings a bit of empathy into how we're thinking about the next steps, the conversations that we're going to have. So I'll give you some examples which I've written down. So remember, these next steps are not about you. They are about your children, because your actions and your behaviors will have a massive knock-on effect on how you feel when you're co-parenting. So here are some examples. I want mum and dad to be kind to each other because that would make me feel less anxious. I don't want to feel like I must choose or feel bad about spending time with either parent. I want mum and dad to make me feel safe and secure so I don't feel unwanted, rejected, or alone. I don't want to feel that any of the arguments are my fault or because of me. Do you see what I've done there? I've put myself as if I'm the child and I'm thinking about how I want my parents to be when I'm around and when all these things are happening. So, for example, when you're discussing the routines and you're discussing the schedules and you go to pick up your child from your ex-partner's house, think about how you're going to show up in that situation. Because if there's an argument, especially when a child's been staying at the other parent's house, when you pick them up, how do you think that child's going to feel? They're going to feel guilty. They're going to feel insecure. They're not going to feel safe. They're not going to feel supported. They've had a great time at their dad's house, but then you rock up and suddenly there's an argument outside the house. How's that going to make them feel? I'd like you now to think about how you're going to show up. Think about how you want to be in those situations. It's about creating a story that is a positive story. So your children are going to see and hear positive reinforcements, a positive environment, which will then lead on to them feeling safe and secure. And how are you going to feel when the conversation is going well and you look at your kids and you see how happy they are that the two of you are getting on and that there is no contentment between you? One of the practices and one of the guides that we would suggest is that you have family meetings. So before a family meeting, think about how you're going to show up, how you're going to behave. Maybe have a plan of questions. And remember, if those questions don't get answered in the way that you want them to, just try and take with you. This is about the children. This is not about you and what you want. It's what's best for the children. You know, you could ask the children what they want. Have a chat with them. Talk to them about the situation. Ask them if they feel safe and secure. Ask them if there's anything that they want to change. It's always good to reflect back on conversations we've had and to speak to our children and involve them. You don't want your kids being unhappy and you don't want to bring them into your arguments. It's not their argument to be had. So show your children some maturity and show them the right way to behave and the right way that you can show up in these situations so that they don't feel like it's their fault. Listen, I really hope this episode has helped you. It may well have touched a nerve. And, you know, I've been through a divorce myself. So these are all tools and practices that I have had to learn to use throughout the process to make sure that my child felt safe and secure and that she didn't feel like it was her fault. If anybody would like me to go through these practices with them, I would be more than happy to help you. I will offer you a complimentary call where we can, you know, go through everything. help you get on your journaling, help you identify areas that you could potentially help your children, think about their mindset, think about the situation you're in, because every situation is different. So this practice might not be easy for you. And then we can start talking about all the practicalities and all the different steps and stages that you can take forward. But you need to be in a clear, calm mindset before you even approach the practicalities. So I really hope that this episode has helped you. It is not easy navigating co-parenting, but if we can put ourselves in a positive mindset before we start approaching things, then I'm sure your children would be in a better off position, and the situation will be a lot easier to deal with and a lot calmer to deal with. And divorce is really, really clunky and horrible and sticky at the best of times. My email address for anybody who does want to get in contact with me is TheRealStoriesPodcast@gmail.com. It's TheRealStoriesPodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to help you, and I'd love to support you. And I'd love to grow this community. So if you have found this episode helpful, please give us a follow and share it with your friends and family. It's really important that you do follow the podcast, because then we know how many people are listening. And if we have a load of people listening, then we will be able to bring in more episodes, more series over to you, and we can grow this community and really, really feel like we're women empowered and we've got this, because life's blimmin' tough as it is. And this podcast is about empowering you and making you feel, you're part of this community. You're not alone. So I'm going to leave you there. I really hope you found this episode helpful, and I will see you next week for my guest episode of Real Women's Stories. Have a fantastic week.